Happy birthday, Mom.
Hey, what have you been up to lately? Me? Well, I made a cake out of potatoes. Why? Well, let me explain. This is my roommate, and this is what you need to know about her. She's in her 30s, her birthday is in June, and she loves potatoes. Seriously, she really, really loves them. Unsolicited, she'll often say things like, "You know what would be good with this? Potatoes." Or, "You know what would be good instead of this? Potatoes." Or her favorite, "God bless potatoes." There's no way I can give the whole list of her potatoisms here. Anyways, being a good roommate and a satisfactory baker, I decided to make her a potato cake for her birthday. Like a birthday cake that has potato as one of its prime ingredients. Not something like a latke or a potato pancake, because that's not really what I'm going for. Surprisingly, a recipe for this was kind of hard to find. I found recipes for cornbread with mashed potato frosting, often with fried chicken, or other kinds of breads that have potatoes in them, but nothing that really caught my eye or was sufficiently cake-like, except for this Irish potato cake recipe that seemed pretty promising. So I decided to take this recipe and make a layered cake with it and use mashed potato as a frosting, so potatoes both inside and out. Here's how I made it. The basic cake has pretty ordinary ingredients that I already had lying around, like flour, sugar, milk, eggs, butter, salt, baking powder, walnuts, raisins, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, and potatoes. Also, I got some gravy. The recipe is pretty simple. One of the ingredients listed on this cake is potatoes that have been mashed. So here's me peeling potatoes like a normal person and then putting them in a pot of cold water to boil. And once the water is boiling and the potatoes are soft enough to pierce with a chopstick, they're ready to be drained and mashed until they're, mashed. After mashing, I spread the potatoes on a plate to cool. The first real step is to preheat the oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's pretty straightforward. The second is to grease your cake pans. The original recipe calls for a 10-inch bundt pan, which fortunately is around the same volume as what fits into two 8-inch cake pans, which is what I had. Instead of greasing and flouring the pans directly, I like to line them with parchment paper and grease those. It helps to keep the cake's texture more consistent. Next, in a medium bowl, you want to sift together 2 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, an 1/8 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons each of ground cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg, and then set this aside. I lost my teaspoon measuring spoon, so I actually have to use my half teaspoon spoons to measure everything out. I have no idea where it went. I hope I didn't throw it out, but it's probably in a landfill somewhere. Then you cream together 2/3 cups of butter. The original recipe calls for shortening, but I didn't have any, and a cup of sugar until light and fluffy. The original recipe asked for 2, but I always use around half of the amount of sugar any recipe calls for, and usually things turn out pretty well, so. Next, beat in 2 eggs to this mixture, one at a time. I like to take out the coleslaw and pre-beat the eggs in a separate bowl before adding them in. The recipe then wants you to add the flour mixture in alternately with 2 cups of the potatoes and 3/4 of a cup of milk. I decided to mix the potatoes and milk together to make things simpler. Also, since I didn't pre-measure my potatoes that have been mashed, I just added them in until the measuring cup hit almost 3 cups. I think I ended up doing around 3 rounds in total. The batter is almost done. You just need to stir in a cup of chopped walnuts and a cup of raisins. I like golden raisins and that's what I had, so that's what I had. Then you pour it into the cake pans. The cake batter wasn't really pourable, so I just scooped it in there with a ladle, making sure that I had equivalent amounts in each pan. Then you just put it in the oven and bake until a toothpick comes out clean. This will vary, but it took me around 70 minutes. Okay, so that's the recipe that I found on Google with a few modifications. Then I was sort of on my own. I decided to make the frosting while the cakes were baking in the oven. You know, basically the same thing as last time. Peel and cut the potatoes, put them in a pot with cold water, boil until soft, and then drain. This time you want to add some butter and salt as well, and then mash until creamy. Then attempt to frost the cake by putting the mashed potatoes in a bag with the wrong tip. Remove the cake from the pans. Put a dollop of mashed potatoes on the bottom of the cake board. Put the first layer of cake on the board, then layer it with mashed potatoes, and then another layer of cake, and cover the whole thing with mashed potatoes and make it look smooth and decent. Then try to pipe it with the bag you chose with the wrong tip, and hold your breath while everything goes wrong for the first while, including having your bag burst, and then change the bag. Try a new tip, and realize that you should have gotten a potato ricer for this job because there's still way too many chunks. But power through it and make it look sort of plausibly like a real cake? What? Huh. Look at that. It actually sort of worked? Okay, well, just accept it and then you move on. I also garnished it with a little thyme, to look sort of like sprinkles, but definitely not as fun looking. And here's what it ended up looking like. I added some candles and put it next to some beautiful poppies, and it looked pretty legit, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, I'm gonna shut up now and let you admire it. My roommate was very excited to get this very unique birthday cake.
Oh my Jesus, it's a potato cake!
And since it was her birthday, I obviously had to sing for her at 4 times the speed.
Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear Mama, happy birthday to you.
I tried to make this cake actually edible, so we had to do a taste test. First, slicing the cake and then serving it with some warm gravy, which I made just following the package instructions. Nothing fancy here because I was too lazy to make that from scratch as well. And now, the moment of truth. How is it?
Very good. It's good.
We couldn't believe our mouths. What the hell? It was warm and savory, but also tasted like a proper dessert cake. Sort of like a pumpkin pie kind of vibe, but a potato cake. We were both pretty impressed and shocked with the results. So overall, this was a surprising success.
You could sell this.
Thanks so much for watching this video if you've made it this far. I really don't know who the market for this kind of video is for, but I appreciate you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Oh my god, look, a cake! Oh my Jesus, it's a potato cake. Oh my god, a potato cake! So close.
Wait.
Get off the knife. Ah!